Alrighty, I think I have all the words spelled right. All right, last chance to back out. So we good to go?
Ready to go.
Welcome everybody in. It's another episode of the Nice Job Podcast. We're back. It's April now and no fooling. We got a good episode for you here. If you're joining us for the very first time, welcome. If you're joining us live, welcome. But what I want to lay down is the kind of the rules here. I like to say is we'd love for you to leave a comment. We'd love for you to like it. We'd love for you to share it with your peers, your friends, your family. That would all be great. It would help us get more eyes and ears on the podcast. It would really help to kind of spread what we're trying to do here. However, the only thing I want to ask you to do, just give us a listen. Take what you learn, take what you hear from this podcast in particular, and try it out in your own business, try it out in your own life. And if it works, beauty, great. If it doesn't, that's another data set for you to make a better decision. So really, it's win-win all around. And if you listen to the podcast regularly, from time to time, I like to make some sports references, bring up my sports background, things of that nature. Well, our guest today is going to be able to roll right along with that. In fact, he's a head coach himself. As his title would say. It is Jim Johnson, ContratorCoachPRO is the organization. Jim, thank you so much for joining us here on the Nice Job Podcast.
I'm pumped to be here. I'm ready to rock and roll and hopefully share something valuable today that helps somebody move their business forward.
I know you're absolutely going to share something valuable. I was doing kind of some light research beforehand, just trying to learn a little bit about you, kind of get where you're coming from. And there is a lot. There is a deep history. There's a very detailed history out there. A lot of different avenues, a lot of different knowledge comes in. And now you position yourself. But let's go back to the beginning in a sense, kind of get a little bit of not the full life story, but kind of like the journey when you really kind of saw that you either had a knack for some business acumen or were your parents contractors? Like, how did you get in where you started to make the mold of what's become Jim Johnson today?
I met a girl from Wisconsin is what happened. I'm from Houston, Texas, born and raised there. And I met this girl from Wisconsin, and she tricked me into moving to Wisconsin. And I had a past history of being very successful in the health club world. I had a couple of health clubs, helped a health club go from 2 clubs to 50 clubs throughout the country, selling franchise and all kinds of fun stuff. And that part of my life was no more a challenge. So I wasn't as interested in it. And she's took me to Wisconsin, showed me Wisconsin, and I was like, man, it's beautiful. It's July. It's like 75 degrees. It's green. And it's not frozen tundra like everybody thinks it is. And I'm like, what kind of fish are in all these rivers we keep crossing? She goes, trout. And I love to fly fish. It's one of my passions. I'm like, I could live here and I can make money anywhere. So let's move. And so we moved, and it was December 1st. It was 6 degrees outside. First time I've ever been that cold in my entire life. It was awful. I'm like, what the heck did I just do? And I had to find a job. And I always liked working with my hands. I hadn't done much of it for a living. I'd always done kind of my own stuff. So I took a job as a carpenter's helper, became a carpenter, started framing, learned a little bit about contracting, and an opportunity came up to sell for a company. And I guess I had a knack for it from my sales background. Did very well. Within 3 months, they made me a sales manager. We took that company from $3.5 million to $41 million in a year, and they failed to pay me on a bonus. And so I became a contractor myself. Ran that business for several years, ran anywhere from 20 to 35, 40 million each year, and built some software while I was there, sold that business. And the software I started selling to other contractors, and gained some notice and got bought by another software company, became the director of sales and design for that company for 5 years. And as I was doing all that and being in the back offices of all these contractors, about 1,000 over those years, I realized they had lots of questions. I'll go and sell the software really quick, and then they question me for the next 2 or 3 hours. How did you grow your business that big? How did you do this? How did you do that? like, maybe somebody should do this. And so I decided to resign and start coaching. And I was just going to do it as like retirement. That was the deal. I was going to coach a couple of companies and go fish and golf in the afternoons. And we coached the first 2, did really well. Then it was 4, then it was 8. We coach anywhere from 25 to 30 or so at a time right now. We've coached a little over 400 companies, and they've done about $3.5 billion in business over the last 8 years or so. That's as brief as I can make that, I guess.
Yeah, and that's no lie there. If you look up Jim, you're going to see an extensive history, as I mentioned, and with all those, if I may say, accomplishments and all that success, you have every sort of right to be like, well, I'm a guru, I'm an expert, I'm a president, I'm a genius, I'm a, all those sort of things. Yet, it's Contractor Coach Pro. You talk about coaching and that sort of background, and it seemed, just based on what I was saying, that it's sort of by design that calling yourself a head coach and things like that. As someone, that has done some coaching in the sports realm and things like that, I find the term coach very, very interesting because it shows a lot of the leadership sort of hierarchy. But it's not quite, a king or ruler. It's very much someone that's kind of in there as well, right? Like a coach is the head of a team, but really it's the whole team entity. Does that resonate with you? Is that a specific reason why you kind of keep calling yourself a head coach at this time instead of going up to maybe some of those highfalutin, maybe ones that sound a little bit more marketing friendly than a head coach? Why stick with that designation?
There's multiple reasons. And much like you, I have a coaching background. I coached sports for 26 years, everything from little bitty guys all the way up to college level in baseball and basketball. And so I understand that. I also got a lot of value from my coaches growing up. I was a baseball and basketball player growing up. I got up to play at a pretty high level. And that would have never happened if it wasn't for what those coaches did to inspire, motivate. Like, that's a part of it, but really understanding then seeing the drive that somebody has, the hunger that somebody has, and channeling that the right way to allow them to chase their dreams as much as they want to. And I think coaching comes down to a few different things. Number one, understanding strategically what you're trying to accomplish and whatever it is you do, whether it's your business or your life or your sports team or whatever it is, looking at the talent that you have and how does that talent fit your strategy, and is it the right talent for your strategy? And then really getting and starting with where you start with all things in the fundamentals. Get the fundamentals down, then coach the skills, reinforce the skills, make sure that learning happens, make sure that you have a process and a game plan to follow that's designed to get you to that strategy, that North Star that you're chasing. And more often than not, you can get there if you've got the right game plan to get there, a blueprint.
And, the same vernacular, coaches will talk about, systems that they're putting in place for their team. I was a hockey coach, and that's the big thing when you come in is you're expected to kind of have your own take on, what system your team's going to play offensively, defensively, things like that. Translate the same to business. But I also know that you try to take a holistic approach to kind of the advice you're giving. And again, I don't want to make this like we're reading the dictionary here, but defining that a bit more, because I find it interesting because yes, there's going to be systems, places, and processes, but it's really from the holistic approach. It's kind of looking at the entire individual beyond just one or two things. Why is that mentality to you so important to have, as opposed to someone that's just giving out recommendations and cutting out cookie cutter systems and just handing them off?
It's kind of funny. When I first got into this whole coaching thing, it was really based a lot on my own knowledge of what had been successful, a broader base of knowledge with all the contractors' offices I had been into. I kind of put together like, hey, these are the things I think I really need to help people with. And at the beginning, culture was a big thing. Like, I really wanted to emphasize that and how important it was, because I think culture in the end wins over all other things. You can see this in sports. Like, you got March Madness going on right now. And you see these teams that are just upsetting these big dog teams with all these stars and everything. It's because their culture, they fit. They're a great team. They have heart, and they see something that this other team is just, they're expecting to win, and they're expecting to go to the NBA, and it's not quite as important to them. And I think those coaches that instill that type of culture, I think Nick Saban is a really good example of a person that instills culture into his program. And your business is the exact same thing. Your culture is going to drive everything else that your business does. And so I knew I wanted to start there, and I had these other things, which are common things like sales and marketing and recruiting and hiring. And as time went on and I did more and more coaching, we kind of had an epiphany. There's like a blueprint to this. And a lot of that stuff had come naturally to me. I had gone to all kinds of seminars and learned all kinds of, I've been to everything and anything that I could possibly invest. I think I've spent a little over $700,000 in my own coaching as I was growing and learning in business. And so what became very clear, there's two sides of our business. And so I'm going to try to explain this in Reader's Digest version. You familiar with what a DNA helix looks like?
Yes. I mean, don't ask my high school anatomy teacher, but yes, I am familiar.
Okay. So there's two sides of it, right? And then it's connected by components. And our business is the same thing. It's a living, breathing thing that has DNA. We have a foundational backbone on one side of our DNA, and we have an operational backbone on the other side of our DNA. And then that thing is connected by 12 components that foundationally, that's like our skeleton, the internal part of us, our muscle and that kind of stuff. That's what we build everything off of. And then operationally, that's all the stuff everybody sees on the outside, your sales and your marketing. It's your skin, your eyes, your hair. And you can either have an ugly baby or a cute baby. It's up to you. And so these components that connect your foundational backbone and your operational backbone happen in an order. And like I said, there's 6 of them that are foundational. Number 1 is leadership. Without good leadership, nothing else happens. And if you don't have the skill and the capacity to grow as a leader, the impact that you're going to make in your business and in the world in general is severely limited. So we got to make sure that part's right first if we're going to go to the next step. And that next step is that leader who now has this ability to lead people and get people to follow him, wants to develop a magnetic culture. And so your culture is number 2. Once I have those 2 things kind of figured out, like I'm a good leader and I can get people to follow me and I know what I want to be like and who we're going to be and why we're going to be that, now we need a process. We need to have a really good process for what we do. So processes and procedures. Once I have those 3 down, then I'm looking at our HR and organizational communication. And so I got to have that stuff nailed down really well. Then it's finance. Finance is the number 2 reason why businesses go out of business. 70-80% of contractors, I know your listeners, a lot of them are contractors, 70 to 80% of them go out of business in the first 3 years, and it comes down to 2 reasons: leadership and finance. If you don't know those 2 things, you're going to have a hard time staying in business. And our job, and it's my mission on this planet, is to take that from 70 to 80% and down to less than 10%. And so that's why we do what we do. So finance is number 5. And then finally, your 6th key component is accountability, setting expectations up front, standards that people are going to meet, and then truly holding people accountable to them and having systems to do that. If you have that stuff down foundationally, everything else starts to become really easy. But we as contractors tend to do the opposite of that. We get very focused on sales, marketing, getting leads, and production, building stuff. And we put a bunch of stuff into our pipeline that has no systems or processes, no real culture. So there's a lot of drama. I can't lead the people that are working for me because I don't know how to. And everything breaks down and we go out of business. But if we get those first 6 down, then you have the next 6 in order. And those become your operational things: technology, marketing, sales, production, training, and then recruiting, hiring, and onboarding. And they happen in that order. And there's a reason they happen in that order, because almost everybody comes to us for the same exact reason. I want to scale my business. I'm like, that sounds wonderful. What do you want to do? I want to hire some people. I said, sounds great. How are you going to train them? And then everything gets really quiet. Yeah. Well, they're going to ride along with me, right? They're going to follow me. I'm going to show them what to do. That takes a phenomenal amount of time and energy and everything else, where if I had a good training program, I could scale somebody up really quickly. Things move a little bit faster. And so, hey, I got a training program in place. So awesome. How are you going to build everything you're going to train everybody about? And how is it going to be different and unique? And one of those things that makes raving fans. And so if you think about it backwards like that, you gotta do them in order to get to that last thing, which is really bringing on an awesome team, and they will be drawn to you because you're very well organized and put together.
And it's interesting how you laid that out, because you talk about the DNA when it comes together, and if it comes together in a certain order, in a certain way, it creates a certain thing. And if there's one thing off, there's one thing different, not to go, too far down that science wormhole, but you can still get things from loose particles DNA, but it's not going to be, the exact thing, the result or, the person or anything like that. So I love that kind of visualization of, you may know all these elements, but if you're trying to do one before the other, you're not going to end up with what your result you're looking for. And using the blueprint, visualization as well, is it kind of says like, hey, this is the full picture of it, but there's steps to complete this. You can't just take a blueprint, throw it down and do it in any sort of order. It's kind of directions along the way. Focusing directly on leadership for just a moment. When in previous, emails back and forth, I had said to you that I want to talk about almost like the coaching mindset, but the coaching mindset within leadership. And I'd love to get your take, your opinion, if you may say so, on how that sort of mindset of not only being a leader, but being a leader that makes the people around you better. How that ends up being such a huge advantage as you go through the rest of those systems. Because some people hear leadership and they go, you know what? I want to be confident. I'm going to be, definitive what I'm doing. I'm the leader. But the better leaders kind of have a little bit of that coaching mindset. Why do you think that that's so important, that you can't just be a leader that's not making people around you better? It can't just be follow me. It's got to be follow me because you all get better. Why is that so important?
I actually have an equation for you if you're interested.
Okay. It's funny. People say it would be a lot of sports, but so far I got science and math. So this is great.
Everything is strategic for me. Everything's ones and zeros, math, puzzles, that kind of thing. It's just the way I look at the world. And what I hope for most people is that their goal is to have an impact one way or the other, whatever that is. And hopefully it's positive and hopefully it's grand. Maybe it's small, whatever it is, but I want to have some type of impact. And your ability to impact somebody is based on an actual equation. It's based on your skill times your capacity will equal your impact to a certain exponent, right? So let me explain what I mean by that. If my skill level as a leader is a 3 and my capacity is a 3, the amount of impact that I'm going to have is times 3, right? To the third power. Mm-hmm. And so I'm limited on skill, I'm limited on capacity, so I don't get much done. I'm a small organization and I can't go very far. But maybe I can raise that skill up. I can get really good at skill. Well, what ends up happening is I get a bunch of people to follow me, they believe in me and believe in what we're all about, but I only have so much capacity to manage them and lead them and work on my business instead of in my business, so I can only go so far. It's the story of McDonald's. The McDonald's brothers had a great deal going on. They had the capacity to run 10 restaurants. They could not do any more than that. They were running themselves ragged, working 100 hours a week. And then Ray Kroc came in and said, hey, hold on a second here. Let's get this really good guy, that really good guy, and this really good guy, and bring them in. And boom, thousands and thousands of locations. And they're actually the largest real estate company in the world. That's the thing that they're most valuable for. And they understood the concept of gaining capacity, because the one thing I've realized that was really a big thing for me about 15 years ago is I can't get anywhere by myself. Well, I can be the greatest expert on the face of the planet. I only have so many hours in the day that I can do things. So my job is to make other experts, other great coaches. And that's what we've been doing here. We're now up to, we got 9 coaches, and a lot of them work in those specific fields. We have a finance coach, I'm an HR coach, a sales coach. And it's been awesome to coach those guys up, teach them those things, and truly empower them. And I think leadership comes down to what we call super skill. It's this ability to connect. Can I connect with you? And then there's 7 habits that allow that connection to happen. And I've read every leadership book you can imagine. And I've like taken notes on all of them. I'm kind of that guy. And I think at last count, there's like 32 skills that we're supposed to know as leaders, and we got to be perfect at all of them. And Okay, nobody can keep that straight. It's impossible, not ever going to happen. 21 irrefutable laws of leadership and all that other stuff, right? We get so caught up in all those things and we get lost in what really comes down to being a good leader. And it's this ability to connect with somebody else and share with them that opportunity is there for them and you're the person that can help them grow. And so there's 7 habits that we teach our leaders to use, and they actually happen in order as well. I've got to engage people first. I got to engage them in my vision and how we're going to grow this thing and what part they play in it. Then I've got to educate them. So I got to coach them. I got to give them the knowledge so that they become confident. And then I got to set the example. I got to actually do what I say we're going to do and show that I'm going to work just as hard as they're going to work and lead from the front. Then I got to have a little bit of empathy and understand that they don't know everything I know. And that they have a life too, and things get in the way and there's problems. It doesn't mean that I'm going to compromise our expectations, but I have to understand and be willing to have that conversation with people. Then I'm going to encourage people. So when I see them start to be successful and having some wins, I'm going to really encourage that and really reinforce that. I'm not going to focus on the negative. Once they start to get things down, then I'm going to empower people. And I'll make that a habit. I'm always looking for these opportunities to empower. And as a matter of fact, I just empowered somebody today. I have let go of the running all the sales stuff for our company. And our sales coach is going to run all that. He's going to take control of it. And that's awesome. I'm excited about it because he's better than I am and he doesn't even know it yet. And it's going to be awesome to see him grow into that. And then once we empower people, we have the 7th and most difficult of those habits that we have to have, which is expect. And we have to make it a habit to expect from people the standards and expectations that we've given them. Because if we don't and we let them slide, then what does it all mean in the first place, right? And the second you allow people to not achieve expectations, it sends a message to everybody else that that's okay. And so we don't really look at those as skills, although they're more habits that I have to do all the time. Because those first ones start to get a little bit of activity, as people start to do things. And then once they have that activity, they start to get a little bit of results. Wow, I got some results. And those results turn out to go pretty well, and they bring in belief. Like once I get belief, now I got my people. Now I got my followers. And that was an eye-opening thing for us to kind of go through and figure out what was it that was actually making these guys get the most out of people. Because we didn't used to coach leadership, to be honest with you. I just assumed, God, you own a business, you must be a pretty good leader. So we're going to start with culture. And we would coach these guys and we'd be like, they're not getting where we think they should get. And we realized it was this leadership thing. And so we went back and we actually coach a lot of leadership now. It's a hard conversation to have with somebody.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to be real honest with you. You took our assessment, which anybody can do on our website. Go take an assessment on our website. And we come back to them and say, hey, our weakness right now is leadership. And we got to work on that with you. And sometimes that's not what they want to hear. And they may not actually work with us at that point in time because they're a little miffed at the conversation. It's surprising how many of them come back because you're going to identify leadership problems really quickly. If somebody's saying, I can't hire good people, I can't get my good people to stay, I got a lot of drama in my business, that's a sign of look in the mirror, man. That's more about you than it is them.
Yeah, and of course, because you really can't get a successful culture without leadership buy-in to begin with. So that's why it's, a lot of people will push culture first, assuming the good leadership, kind of like as you did. But, good leadership is being able to also buy into your culture. So you're not just kind of delegating and going out there. So it's interesting to kind of come to that discovery. But also you're like, you said like a lot of times there's the assumption that you're a good leader, including one from the outside perspective, someone like yourself, maybe looking at a business, but then also maybe internally as well, is you might have had success as a solo entrepreneur, and you might have had success in like very small teams, but as you start to grow and that culture's got to scale and, your HR, your training's got to scale, all that's got to scale. That's when the leadership cracks tend to start to show. So it's interesting that you said that.
You start to see these breakdowns in organizations at certain points. Like for them to get into that 7-figure number, like to break that barrier, it's usually going to take a person or two more than them to do that. And so leadership starts to become very valuable at that point. And maybe they don't have that skill. And so that's why they keep not being able to get through that. Once you get past that and you start to get into that next up to 3 million or so, you're normally going after people you know. I got a friend over here come work for me. Maybe it's a relation, wife, son, whatever. Maybe you bring those people in and you kind of get to this $3 million number, but you run out of people at that point. But the thing is, you guys are tight knit. You all know each other. And so you kind of know what each other's thinking. You know how you work together and all that stuff. It's a little family, right? But now you want to grow further. You want to scale even further. You bring in these new people from the outside that aren't used to that whole dynamic, and you haven't set the standards. You haven't set the accountability. You haven't given the HR and organization and that kind of stuff, the job descriptions and all the things you got to do. And it breaks down. And you wonder why it keeps breaking down. Well, it's because there's a whole different type of communication that has to happen at that point. And we help companies do that stuff all the time. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and these are things, you talk about that one level, but even with smaller, areas as you initially start to grow, we hear a lot of times of bringing on the first couple employees, is sometimes because you haven't had to worry about, expanding or really sharing the things that you were doing. So even that first step of growth versus as you start to get into the larger growth, there's always these sort of things where you kind of see the limit of your capacity, but then also understand that what you're building now needs to be something that has a little evolution to it and has a little expansion within each key element. And I think that's why just hearing you talk about it, I think you share kind of the same thing I do. That's why it's really fun to kind of, help explore and talk to these people and come to do decisions together, as opposed to like, all right, well, here it is, go do it. Because it's all unique situations, it's all individualistic. And while there might be some trends that come together, every story's their own.
Here's one thing I know about a business being successful or not. It doesn't have anything to do with what Jim Johnson believes or what system he thinks you should run. It has everything to do with what you believe in. We can give some great advice, keep you out of trouble, help you stay on this framework and understand, hey, leadership's first, let's get those skills down. But as you start to build things out, we want to build it in a way that you believe in. So, hey, here's this option, this option, which fits you best. And we're going to advise based on your skills and resources. And we end up building unique companies each and every time that we do that with somebody, which is super cool because a unique company becomes valuable.
And for me, that's what aligns. I talk about that coaching sort of mindset, though, is, from the sports perspective, it's like, well, who's on your roster? You can try to say you're going to be a power hitting team, but if you got guys that are fast and play small ball, like it's not going to work.
Well, let's put this into that sports terminology. So if I had a team that all they were was a bunch of home run hitters, let's use baseball as the example. Am I going to win many games?
If they hit.
If they hit, right?
But most likely not, yeah.
Somebody's got to play defense. Somebody's got to run balls down. Somebody's got to throw balls, and somebody's got to run, right? And most of those home run hitters, that's not their forte. And so I need a well-balanced team that knows their roles and does the component that fits them the best. And what we see in those solo guys that are trying to grow that first time, they almost always hire somebody just like them. They're really good at sales, and so they go hire another sales guy. Or they're really good at building something and go hire another guy who's really good at building. When what they need to do is go, what do I suck at? I suck at this thing. I don't want to do that thing anymore. That's who I should go hire. Because then it gives them the capacity to do what it is that they do great, and their business will grow. It's a simple concept, but it's kind of hard for people to get sometimes.
And yeah, that's what I said. That's why it goes down to, knowing kind of what you have and knowing what you need from that sort of perspective. Because you're right on. Yeah. Like we joke back and forth here. We go down the baseball rabbit hole in that sense, but like hitting home runs, you put runs on the board, but if you're not keeping it off, then you constantly have to hit home runs. And what's the old thing that if you're good 30% of the time, you could potentially make the Hall of Fame in baseball, so you don't, that margin for error is not that great. So, having kind of a well-rounded complemented team. Jim, you and I could talk about a variety of topics to go back and forth. I have a feeling this might be best served as, bringing you back for part 2 sometime, maybe in season 3 or season 4 as we go on. But before we go today, I want to ask you the question I've been asking everybody in season 2, because we bring people on the podcast and, they're experts in their own right and they have a lot of expertise, but I know that even someone like yourself is out there trying to like learn or explore the next thing. So that's my question for you. What is something that you don't know now, or you don't have a full handle on, that you're either actively working on or would be excited just to find the answer to?
I'm really interested in two things. There's two things that are really kind of driving my thought processes right now. One is big data, like just understanding data and how valuable that is, which may not apply to what it is that we're talking here, but everything that you have coming into your organization is data. And how can I take that data and use that data to springboard my business? So it could be a simple thing, like just keeping all your customers and their addresses and all that other good stuff in an easily accessible format. So when something happens, like maybe a storm or it's windy or there's a flood, you do roofing or you do mitigation, hey, I know who to go to, the people we already had. And that helps. But taking that data and really doing some pretty big things with it is all interesting to me for whatever reason. The other thing that's interesting to me is the buyer's persona right now, who we are as human beings. I'll be honest with you. Last thing I want is some sales guy sitting in my house. I also don't want to go to Walmart. I want to hop on Amazon and have it delivered to my house. And I would be older in that crowd of people that think that way. I'm 51 years old. And so I'm more in that group that like, most people my age are like, hey, can I put it on paper? And like, I got a flip phone, right? But I'm more the, hey, how do I use this technology to make my life a better life? And what really clicked to me was when you could buy a car online. Like, I went, what? Buy a car? Man, there's no way I would buy a car online. That seems crazy to me. I don't know what scratches are on it, the engine knocks, any of that kind of stuff. But then I started looking into it, and this Carvana place, like, you can see anything and everything about that car is like being there. And then when it shows up, if you don't like it, you can give it back. And so people are buying cars online. So what else can they buy online? Could they buy the fencing that you're going to put in for them before you ever even show up? Could they buy the roofing you're going to install in their house, the siding, the windows, all that stuff? And I think they can. And I think that the ability of technology gives us a growth arc that we didn't have before. Could I sell a fence? I'm in New Braunfels, Texas, which is right between Austin and San Antonio. Could I sell a fence to somebody in Toronto? I absolutely could. All I got to do is connect with somebody up there that can install it. So the world may change for us. Yeah. And if we're not thinking about that, there's an opportunity for somebody to step in there and go, guess what? I'm roofers on. I'm going to put roofs on all over the country.
Yeah. And that sounds like something that when someone kind of figures it out, or when you kind of see, 90% of the building blocks there, that sounds like something that will explode. And so, by
the way, anybody that wants to be roofers on, I actually own the website. So I'll sell it to you.
There you go. I love that. Well, hey, thanks for sharing that with us. I always find that very interesting. Like I said, is, you were able to drop so much knowledge, but still be like, all right, well, this is kind of what I'm thinking next. I hope for those listening, it kind of puts out there, if you think like that you're overwhelmed with problems, things like that, is everyone to get to where they are is solving problems in front of them, but trying to think of the next thing. So if you keep that same mentality, like you hear from Jim or any of our guests, I think that's a good mentality to take. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Like I said, I would love to invite you back sometime in the future. We'll take a look at what our episodes look like. But if someone's listening to this and love to get in touch with you or find out more about you, where can we direct them towards?
Before I answer that question, I want to answer a question you asked me earlier that I didn't quite finish. You said, why the coach thing, right?
Yeah.
I could be a consultant. I could be any of that other stuff. First off, consultants wear ties, and that sounds terrible. This is me. I wear a ball cap. I wear a T-shirt or a polo. Most of the time, I've got warm-up pants on. It's just, that's who I am, and it's my background. And I think it's a better working relationship. I don't want this to be stodgy and all that other stuff. And plus, I don't want to come in there and be a consultant and say, hey, here's all the things you're doing wrong. Fix those. See you later. Coaches stick with you. They hang with you. They're there by your side. They're like, hey, man, attaboy, we got this. We'll swat on the butt. Let's go. And so I like that persona a little bit better. As far as getting a hold of us, you can always find us at ContratorCoachPRO.com, all one word, Contractor Coach ContratorCoachPRO.com. You can hop on our website, take a free assessment. There's an assessment button on there. It will evaluate your whole entire business and all of those 12 components that I gave earlier. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, let's see what else, LinkedIn, all that under Contractor Coach Pro. We got Facebook group, Contractor Coach Pro, where we're always putting in great content in there. And you can also listen to our podcast. So if you ever get a chance to listen to a podcast, Contractor Radio is our podcast. And I just bought a media agency today called American Contractor. And so that's like a television show, network, and all kinds of cool stuff. So do conferences and things like that.
That sounds awesome. We'll have a couple of those links in our show description. If you're watching live now on Facebook, give me a moment. I'll go put it in the comments in a minute there. So don't worry if you couldn't write it down all fast enough. But Jim, thanks so much for the time today. And I know we'll be talking with you soon.
Yeah, I want to be clear on about half a company. So I got 50% of it. So I don't want that guy to go, wait a minute, he didn't buy a company. So we're partners. So it's good. Hey, thanks for having me today. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Our pleasure indeed. And to all of you out there, thank you for tuning in, whether you watch live, you listen audio only, tune in on YouTube, or watch the replay on Facebook. I appreciate you being here, and I hope you got a lot from this episode. I know for certain I did. I have the whole page of the notebook filled out. So if I got that much, I know you as entrepreneurs out there got so much more. I want to thank you once again for tuning in. Go ahead, Jimmy. Yeah, go ahead.
One last thing. Book's coming out, Contractor Blueprint. So pay attention. That'll be out there on Amazon and all that other stuff. We got all this written down and given to them.
Perfect. You know, I'm over here taking notes. You have the whole book coming out. It sounds like you did it for me.
Yeah, it's been a project, but yeah, it's just about ready to go. Awesome.
Well, yeah, we'll be looking out for that, and as that comes out, I know that we'll be picking up here on the Nice Job side, and who knows, maybe we'll do a little fun where we pick up a bunch of them for a couple of our community members, and maybe have a little fun so we can get that book into some people's hands.
Yeah, thanks for letting me plug it too, by the way. Appreciate that.
Hey, no problem. Like I said, the one thing we'll do with the Nice Job Podcast is we are not like a plugging platform, but if you come and bring value and all that stuff, people want to hear more. So it's not like it's a plugging a book. It's, hey, this is what you're going to get, and this is going to be an interesting sort of thing. So our pleasure for sure. We're glad to kind of get that out there because it's going to help people. We wanted to get out there.
We're going to get that number down to 10% or less.
Well, I appreciate all of you out there that have tuned in and listened in and took a little something from this episode and are going to try it out in your life. I'm Sean Hill, host of the Nice Job Podcast. Thanks once again. We want you to be healthy. We want you to be safe. And don't forget to have a little fun out there as well. We'll see you next week.